Seismic Sisters Show, we chat with the National Democratic Rising Star, freshman to the U.S. Congress, Lateefah Simon. Carrying the torch for the Democratic Party and women of color, Lateefah's brand of politics is fresh, fierce, and feminist. Lateefah, it's such an honor to chat with you.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Let's jump right into our questions. You're stepping into the seat of an incredible trailblazer, Barbara Lee. What lessons or wisdom did she impart to you, and how are you honoring her legacy while carving out your very own?
I love the question. And right off the bat, I can think of three things. There's so many things, but three things that I'm carrying with me every single day, during the campaign, post-election, and hopefully for years to come. Barbara's such a thinker and such an actor, but one, it might seem too practical, but wear comfortable shoes. Working with Ms. Lee post my primary, she took me throughout the Capitol, about a week out of every month. And my, oh my, can that sister move. She can move. I'm with my high heels thinking there's a parochial way to bring about democracy. She's in her cute sneakers flying through the Capitol, really engaged with Democrats and Republicans. She's so well loved in that building. So what that told me, when she gave me that first piece of advice about basically buckle up, that being demure in politics is not necessarily the strategy. Being practical and thoughtful and being agile and willing to go the mile. I mean, she not only moves fast physically, but she's a brilliant thinker. I think number two, she's taught so many of us that she's mentored that you always have to vote and move with your values, always. And that oftentimes doing that, you'll have to stand on the side of the road by yourself, but history will tell itself true and other folks will join you. So while compromise in some sense may be important, when it is core in your values to move a certain way, you got to do that. And then thirdly, Congresswoman Barbara Lee thinks bigger than just the politic in front of her. She's an internationalist. She moves with the ethos of peace and justice. Through her work over the last 30 years in Congress, there's been a deep focus on not just the plurals of peace and justice, but she's dug in and she's championed issues from HIV and AIDS, rights for queer children, reproductive rights, not just the right to have full comprehensive reproductive rights, but chipping away at bad policies such as the Hyde Amendment that's frozen reproductive rights for women who are dealing with institutions that have federal funding. I mean, she's a policy expert and she understands that the fate of women and girls in this country is inextricably linked to the fate of women and girls throughout the nation. So those lessons really and many more I have taken to heart and want to, God willing, stay as close as I can to what I call our forever Congresswoman, to be able to lead with the grace, the love, and the intellect that she embodied. I have a lot to do, particularly in this administration, but I know that these lessons will not steer me wrong.
Thank you. You truly captured the legacy and the spirit and values of Congresswoman Barbara Lee. She's a powerhouse and her energy is still with us. She's not going anywhere, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the next question I'd like to chat with you about is how do we pursue a feminist agenda in challenging times? Mm-hmm. So how do you continue to champion a feminist agenda in an administration and a political climate that may not always align with feminist values?
Well, I got to say, I'm an Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks feminist to my heart and my soul. And, I've been telling folks, just look at this last election. While so many of us are still devastated while facing the realities in front of us, I'm a Black woman, and Black women in this country have continued to be the backbone of the Democratic Party, given the resources or not. Our futures are based on how women are positioned in this economy, in our workplaces, in our homes, our opportunity to receive the health care that we need. We're still fighting for a prevailing wage in this country. Let me step back. The majority of the care economy is lifted by women. I think it's time for us to advance the feminist doctrine to really include and center women of color, understanding that we are nothing really without a vibrant economy that honors the folks who are lifting up this nation. So, reproductive health and reproductive access, clearly forefront and center. Wage justice, front and center. But being able to, I think for so many of us, we've known this for a very long time, ensuring that women of color are leading organizations that have maximum opportunity to reach the masses in this country. We have had to fight with the Democratic Party, for decades to center, again, the values of messaging. And I think as we move forward, folks will be able to say, they look at the stats and they'll say, yeah, you're right. There's no reason that we point fingers moving forward. It's just, again, acknowledging that working people need a voice. Women and women of color deserve to be at the heads of many of these decision-making tables. And I hope to propel these values, which I believe are not just feminine values, they're American values. That if you're taking care of the sick and the weary, you deserve to have all the benefits that you need. If you're parenting children, your children deserve to have not only health care, but childcare that is accessible, affordable, and quality. So what does that mean? It means that the people taking care of your children can also take care of their own children. These feminist values to me are the values of my grandmother. I will never falter in speaking the truth about how we need to be centered in all levels of politics, but also in every single policy that we purport, cross politics, cross party.
I'd like to ask you about Vice President Kamala Harris. She appointed and supported you early in your career. And how has her mentorship shaped your path? And how do you see her campaign this election year? How did it elevate the voices of Black women voters?
Black women have voted their conscience since we were able to vote. My grandmother, when she was born, was not able to vote, right? She wasn't able to vote when other women in this country were able to vote. Black people have had to fight so hard for our rights to vote. We have voted our values consistently. Kamala's nomination really broke forth an opportunity for folks to see the power and the brilliance of Black women in this country. Kamala has been such a mentor for me and really thousands of other women. When she hired me as a youth organizer coming into her office in government, she was very clear that excellence was the least of her expectation, and that for Black women, we have to come early and leave late. We were not born with spoons in our mouths full of riches and luxuries, and that we're going to have to, work harder to raise money. Even when we raise that money, folks are going to question how we spend it. Our intellect will be consistently challenged. So we have to, again, read more and read often. I believe that those things are still true in this country. We, even with a woman at the top of the Democratic ticket, the racism and the misogyny that she faced on both sides of our party are still a tale that we need to tell. But for us, for women of color who've been in politics or in leadership, we know that every single time we walk out of the door, our expertise is questioned, that our humanness, our humanity is questioned, but we know that that's not a new story. I think the nation saw it first and foremost. The globe saw it, that you have a woman of color who, again, has been an attorney for much of her life, who came into the work to protect women and girls over 30 years ago, had served at every level of government, and yet she ran a priceless and perfect campaign, and her intellect and her experience was questioned by both sides of the aisle. We know that racism and misogyny is still deeply entrenched in our politics, but what it does for us who have been in this work with the skin that we walk in, we understand that there's a lot more work to do. Ms. Harris said to me just a few days ago, she said, Lateefah, I know you're disappointed. We all are. But what happens when we're disappointed? We put our shoulders back, you put your chin up, and you roll up your sleeves and you get back to work. And she said to me, I was in freshman orientation. She said, focus. You got work to do. So that's what I plan to do.
Next question is about the power of Black women in politics. And Black women have historically been what they call the margin of victory in elections. So do you think that Kamala Harris's candidacy created more space for Black women in elected office? And how does that influence your approach to leadership?
When I walk through the halls of Congress and I see Shirley Chisholm's picture, I know just on baseline what she had to go through to win her congressional seat, but moreover, to walk in those halls and demand the committee assignments from the then speaker. It is very, very tough work, because oftentimes even folks who are your colleagues whisper about your tenacity, your intellect, again, your ability to be in the position of power. You are consistently questioned. there are organizations like Higher Heights. There are organizations like, Black women, like WAPWA, for instance, that are consistently in touch with Black women who are running for office, knowing that we have organizations like Emerge and there's Emily's List. They're amazing. But having a racialized lens and understanding the obstacles that are very unique to Black women was important for me in terms of my training and my ability to get through the real rough stuff about running an office. And I don't think that those things are going to go away anytime soon. If you are thinking about running for office and you're a woman of color, one, you're not alone. Two, yes, it will be harder. It will be substantially harder. But life is not easy. And the folks who we're representing need us to be at the table, not just in the sidelines. They need us to be in decision-making positions so that we can call, one, into question what's not being discussed, what's not being moved forward, and two, to propose new opportunities for all of us. If we're fighting for Black maternal health, I believe all women will benefit, right? If we're fighting for policies that decrease mass incarceration, and we're thinking about opportunities for healing for both survivors and accountability for offenders, we all benefit, knowing that Black and brown folks are overrepresented in the criminal justice system, knowing that Black women are overrepresented in child maternal deaths in this country. If we get it right for folks who are dealing with the most amount of oppression and racism and, again, misogyny, and folks who are struggling through poverty, everyone else benefits. We know that. So with folks, I would encourage, if you're thinking about running for office and it feels extremely difficult. Look, I'm a single mother. I'm actually a widow. I'm an only parent. I have an 8th grader. I ran this race knowing that if I didn't do it, who else was going to talk about the issues that are really, really important? I can't wait for Superwoman to come from the sky. It's us. It's us. We deserve to have an ample opportunity in this democracy to run, to win, and to govern.
Actually transitions into my next question, which is really about, what you were saying about single parenthood and leadership. And how do you balance the personal and political? But what do you think that single parents bring to public service that's often overlooked?
I'm in a very unique situation, not so unique in this country, but unique in politics. I can't drop my child off at her father's house. Her dad died of cancer when she was 3. I helped to take care of my mother. And even in politics, I support 5 households. But I'm very clear historically that I still have so much privilege. My grandmother was a wet nurse. She was a wet nurse. She nursed white women's babies. This privilege and opportunity to be able to speak for folks who have not been given voice. Yeah, being a single parent is really difficult. Equitable childcare is a huge central issue for so many women who need to get to work every day, who are working 3 or 4 jobs, who are faced with the reality that sometimes they must leave their children at home. I'm not going to say it's been easy for me to run in this election. It wasn't easy for me to run on a local level, but damn it, I have an amazing community, as so many women do, of girlfriends, of best friends, of coworkers who would pick up my kid and bring her home and make some quick spaghetti or help her with her homework. I think our children, they benefit from not only our struggle, but seeing us fight through it. Women, we have community that'll help us move into positions of leadership. If we are not in a situation where we could sit at the table and help prescribe new policies and procedures and opportunities for folks who have our same situation, nothing is going to get better for the masses. My situation may be a bit better than it was just 20 years ago, but the job is to fight for all of us. So listen, I won't sugarcoat it. It's tough, but it's always been tough.
The next question is really about protecting democracy as women of color, as a woman of color. With democracy under threat globally, what can women of color, especially those in leadership like yourself, do to protect and strengthen democratic values?
I think it's being there for the fight. I have no idea what this trifecta will look like, although we have heard a bunch. We've heard a bunch in rhetoric about shutting down the Department of Education that's taking away resources for disabled children and adults. And we've heard that, this administration is going to go harder on the states to decrease women's likelihood to receive the reproductive health care that they deserve. We know that federal workers who are unionized are going to take a really difficult hit, being there for the fight and standing up for what's right every single day. As an incoming legislator with a trifecta, I know that there's a ton of legislating we will not be able to do, but damn it, we're not going to lay down and just be trampled over. I think fighting every single moment, from, again, my brothers and sisters in the Senate during the Senate confirmation hearings, to pushing orphan bills on the floor, to tell the story of the young child from West Virginia struggling to get health care, to her counterpart who's 2 and 3 years old at a children's hospital in California, also waiting for an insurance company's decision to continue her cancer care. We have stories to tell. We have legislation to push and to move. You better believe that the democracy is, while it's thinly veiled, we have a constitution that we must fight to uphold. Not only the right, the inalienable right to free speech and free religion, but to have a democracy that is consistent with the checks and balances that our framers promised us. I believe that's going to be a fight to keep all those things in place. So we just have to know that, if we're going to participate in this republic, we have to hold folks' feet to the fire, that there were promises made for the citizens of this country and those seeking asylum. And with that, I think that, having the executive branch overseen by there's a judicial branch that holds us in the middle, and then you have the legislature. I really think that we have to fight for that model, to the sustainment of that model, with all that we have.
Let's talk about Black women voters as a force. So Black women have consistently shown up as the backbone of American democracy. So what are your thoughts on how their political influence continues to grow and shape the future of our country?
I think we're going to have to be very, very strategic, surgically, in conversations with the Democratic Party, but also on the ground as it relates to the NGOs that are being run in this country, particularly organizations that are feminist, that traditionally have not had Black and brown women at the heads. That's changing and shifting. But as you know, we got a long way to go there. We have a long way to go, and even in progressive politics, having Black women at the center of our politic. I am so encouraged by the Kimberly Ellises of the world. I'm so encouraged by the Latasha Browns of the world, who I go to consistently for advice and that soul spirit of encouragement. They have made ways, and again, thousands of other women who have said, they're not going to make a place for us. We're going to have to shift it. We're going to have to figure it out. I hope now that I have some positionary leverage in the Democratic Party in California, that I will be able to continue in this living legacy that Ms. Lee has had. Where are the resources for Black communities to door knock, to be able to message? We've been taken advantage of and for granted for too long. There was so much resource put into other communities, rightfully so. We didn't see a shift in the voting patterns in those communities. So we have to ask ourselves, who are the messengers that can actually bring democracy back into the center, the democratic values that are truly American values? And many of those credible messengers have been deeply underfunded by our democratic prowess. That has to change. And again, it's not about pointing fingers. It's about telling the truth. It's about saying what has happened, framing it, and developing a strategy moving forward, doing things that haven't been done before, that hopefully will get us a new result.
Now, you have worked with some incredible women as mentors, from Barbara Lee to Kamala Harris. So how important is mentorship in politics? And what do you hope to pass down to the next generation of women leaders, yourself as a mentor?
I'm so blessed that, since I was 19 years old, I've been a part of a large organization that was teeny when we started, the Young Women's Freedom Center, that is now all over California. We have 10,000 members and almost 200 employees of young women and girls, Black and brown, who have been in systems. So starting my work, over 30 years of working, I believe in mentorship, but I also believe in what we call a Freirean approach. Paulo Freire talked about, in all of his own pedagogy, that learning should be expected and encouraged from everyone, from young people, from adults. So having been a part of creating an institution, a hallmark institution, the Young Women's Freedom Center, where we are creating a political identity, again, for women who have been stepped on in our politics to grow and politicize, having an infrastructure that continues to propel those women, not only as NGO leaders, but again, as civic leaders in the space in Sacramento and DC. I'm going to continue that legacy. I know what mentorship has meant to me. I also know that my biggest teachers are the young women who are struggling to access medical care, are the disabled folks who are trying to get into a building that is a government building and there's no ADA. And so they figure out and find a way. I've seen folks carry folks in wheelchairs into spaces to argue for accessibility policy, both locally and nationally. I've worked with members of the queer community day in and day out and watch the fierceness of young children go to school board after school board meeting and board of supervisors meeting and deliver testimony to members of Congress to protect them, to protect their sanctity, to protect their safety. Those are the mentors in my life that I owe everything to. And if I can judge myself on my own excellence, it will consistently be the space that I make for the folks who are facing the highest degree of oppression to be able to teach and to challenge and to hold accountable the people in our government who have power. That's just the way that I work. And those are the teachers. The teachers are the folks who are dying to survive, not the folks who are perched and trying to figure out an analysis of how those people stay alive. It's truly the folks who are gasping for tomorrow. And it may sound a bit cheesy, but really, if you've ever been able to speak to someone struggling with heroin addiction who has called 10 numbers to get into a treatment facility and everyone says no, or a family who sleeps in their car and they're on an 8-month waiting list for Section 8, I can read white papers all day, but it's those voices who have shaped me. My own being a teen parent, being a disabled woman myself, watching my parents struggle deeply, dealing with homelessness myself as a young person. I have a responsibility to listen to folks who have not been listened to.
Thank you. Mentorship is not just teaching, it's also learning, the back and forth. So that's an important point. So looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of California and the nation? So how do you hope your leadership will create a more equitable, feminist, and an inclusive society?
Continuing to call to the center the voices that I think are critical to advancing our democracy. Like I said, brown and Black women, previously incarcerated folks, victims and survivors, people without keys, without homes, disabled folks who are trying to create solutions that government is too slow to implement. Those are the folks who I will always center my life, my work in ensuring that I not only have their ear, but they have mine. I hope for a California where everyone is housed. That is the floor. The fact that is a dream is deeply concerning. I want a California where our air is clean, where our public transportation ecosystem is well supported, where young people can go to college and not end up with $70,000 of debt, that we have trade industries that are union led, where folks can have a prevailing wage for moving us into this next economy. I dream of a California where the innovators and the brilliant thinkers, from those who are creating new microeconomies, even crypto, or folks who are in the biotech firm, see themselves as critical to advancing our democracy. In my time in campaigning and before, learning about new industries has been so fascinating. The biotech industry in California is raging. And I got to say, as someone who buried my husband, my daughter was 3 years old. I hope she can still remember his face and his voice, but why aren't we providing a ton of support to these amazing, brilliant scientists who are on the brink of curing so many diseases? I dream of a California where we're inviting in that brilliance and that talent, and we're supporting it. It should not just be supported by the private market. I believe, in our lifetime, we will be closer to curing cancer and sickle cell disease as we should be to getting rid of poverty, being able to ensure that women who are parenting or pregnant have all the things that they need so that their children can grow up and be a generation that is thriving and not struggling. California is a precious space. And as goes California, really goes the rest of the world. And so being a part of a democratic process where we understand that we have so much in common, while we have some differences, I say every day, we all want the same things for our babies. We want to make sure they go to a good school. We want to make sure they go to college. There are workers right now, laying down pipe and painting in their union work. They just want to put braces on their little boys' teeth. They want to make sure that they can walk to the market at night and be safe. Folks want to make sure if they're applying for jobs, they desperately want to work, that those opportunities are out there so that they don't have to participate in an underground street economy. I can go on and on. That's not a utopia. Those are well-run societies. Civil society should have a baseline for all the things that I just talked about. Government could be the prize instead of what many perceive to be the enemy. And I hope to be a part of that process.
Well, thank you for sharing an exciting vision of California's future. I believe it too.
I got to say, Seismic Sisters is where it's at. We are the earthquake, right? We got to keep it moving. We can't be stagnant. Thank you for this time. And I just really appreciate the work that you all are doing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lateefah, for an inspiring conversation. We'll be cheering you on every step of the way. As we bring more powerful and inspiring stories to light, be sure to subscribe to the Seismic Sisters channel for more informative feminist content. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kim Christensen, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Seismic Sisters Show.